Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the No Laying Up podcast. Solly here. Got an interview coming shortly with Stephan Jaeger, recent winner out on the PGA Tour. Stephen was on the podcast, I think it was 6 years ago now, episode 150. We get into a little bit more of his background and whatnot in that episode. We did not spend a lot of time on that. For those of you not familiar, Stephen is of German descent. He lives in Tennessee, went to school there in Tennessee. And if you're confused on the accent, that's why I'm explaining this, right? He is a bit of a German, yet also Tennessee accent mixed in there. I love it. Great dude. Really happy for his success. He's had incredible success. We talk about where that's coming from, what he's done to add distance to his game, and how he's made himself into a top 20 in the FedEx Cup on the PGA Tour. Pretty remarkable. We are proud to say season 9 of Torah Sauce and this podcast are presented by our longtime partners at Precision Pro Golf. They recently launched the Titan Elite. It is the new gold standard for golf rangefinders. The Titan Elite stands out with its incredible build, quality, durability, thanks to its aluminum shell and IP67 dust and waterproof rating. Plus, you can connect the Titan Elite to the Precision Pro app and take advantage of groundbreaking features like GPS front, center, and back of green yardages, as well as Find My Titan. It alerts you if you left your rangefinder behind. I know everyone listening to this has done that at some point. Of course, it has the same accuracy and speed that you would expect from any Precision Pro rangefinder. Don't forget about the NX10 rangefinder as well. Fast, accurate, and available in a variety of no laying up designs, including the Torah Sauce 9, Season 9 limited edition Vegemite-inspired wayward golfer design. Best of all, Precision Pro currently running their Father's Day sale. All rangefinders are $30 off, including the new Titan Elite. Go to precisionprogolf.com to take advantage of their best sale of the year and save $30 on your next rangefinder. Don't forget to grab one for your dad as well. Again, precisionprogolf.com. Let's get to the pod. All right, I need you to tell me, if you see Scottie Scheffler with a cup of coffee, like, do you smack it out of his hands and do you tell him that coffee is for closers? Like, do you let him know that you run things around here?
It's funny because I obviously saw him at the Masters a couple weeks after that tournament, right? And we play. I want to say we played together. We played together at RBC on Saturday, I think, and I actually played pretty good. He beat me by like four. I think he shot 8 under and I shot 4 under, and I was like, hey, I'm pretty happy with it, right? But I remember telling Ted, I was like, hey, man, I guess the Masters was a decent consolation prize, right? To losing to me in Houston. He just kind of chuckled. He ended up winning RBC as well. I was like, Jesus, this guy is like unbeatable at the moment. So it's a pretty impressive run he's been on, honestly.
A little bit, I'd say, yeah, yeah.
He even I remember watching last week at Fort Worth. He shot two over the first round. I was like, oh my God, is he gonna miss a cut? What? Sure enough, has a damn chance to win the tournament on Sunday. I'm like, this guy is just relentless, right? I mean,
It's
it's pretty impressive. I mean, I obviously didn't play on tour when Tiger was out here and making that kind of look easy in a sense, right? But I'm sure glad he missed that putt. To be honest with you, it made my life a whole lot easier. And obviously getting in the big events and all that kind of stuff, getting my first W was awesome. So I appreciate that 5 footer he missed. And I wish him all the best of luck for the rest of the year because I don't care. He missed that one. So I'm pretty happy with that one.
I doubt. I wonder if he even remembers that he missed that one. But I promise
No.
we'll talk a little bit about you as well. But
Yeah.
just pausing on the Scotty thing, for like, are we justified in how much we've been freaking out about what's been happening lately? I mean, you're a peer of his. You're competing against them. Like, this is as absurd as we're making it out to be in the media,
I,
isn't it?
I think, I just think that that dominance that you might have seen like in the Byron Nelson days and the old days, right? I feel like, I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, but I feel like the pool of great players was smaller back then. Even in Tiger's area, I feel like, there was maybe a little less that couldn't compete at that point, like early when Tiger came out. I feel like every single guy. I mean, some get these guys got a college, dude, and they're unbelievable. I played practice round with. I remember playing practice round with Colin in 2000. When did he come out on tour? In 2017 or 18 or 19? I can't
19. Yeah.
remember. 19. I played a practice round at the 3M. I remember that because him and Wolf were in a playoff or like got in the last hole, whatever. And I was like, oh, this kid's been pretty good right here. And sure enough, like finished second the first week, wins Barracuda. Ludwig Berg, like he comes out screaming, plays on a Ryder Cup team. I mean, these kids are so incredibly good and prepared to play on tour life. Like I was not prepared. Like I was barely coming by with driving to Gainesville, Georgia to play the Hooters event at the Shasta. Like that, like I could find a day's in and that's about it, right? Like I was not prepared for that. So that learning curve for me was obviously a lot longer. But these guys, like the colleges, do such a good job now to, get these guys ready. Like, hey, you have to have a trainer, you have to have a physio, you have to have a coach, you have to have a mental coach. Like all that stuff was, I don't know if it was available. I'm sure it was, but I feel like now it's just like, holy, like this is new level. So kind of going back to your question, I feel like Scotty doing that with all that talent, all that, it's just impressive. Like anytime I've played with him a bunch this year, and it's just he never, like, it's so incredibly boring in the best possible way, like the best possible way. When I say boring, like he never misses an iron shot, like he never misses in the wrong side ever. He chips it great. His putters, yeah, it's fine. God, thank God his putter is not amazing. We'd never win a tournament.
That's insane. He's the best
Never win a
chipper,
tournament.
best driver, best iron player, and best chipper. Like it's just insane.
Like, don't give him the putting too. Like, we don't need that, right? So
But so
it
in
it,
the
it
final round of Houston, are you like again? This is a different level. You've played with a lot of top talent, but this is a different level run, regardless of the sustainability of it all. Like it's a
mm,
different level
mm,
run. Like how do you stay in your own process of like and we're gonna talk about your kind of career
mm,
path and everything. But in this
mm.
moment, you're like, how am I gonna beat that guy today? Plus a bunch of other people up on that leaderboard, knowing exactly how you're describing this guy in a very different way. How do you go about beating that guy?
Yeah, obviously he wasn't quite on the run yet to the extent I mean, he won two in a row, which is, the Honor Palmer. You might as well give him that tournament every year. But he ended up obviously winning the Players as well, coming into there. So, I've said this a lot in interviews after the round. I felt like he's such a good dude to play with. You kind of forget that you're playing with by far the best player in the world at the moment. Like, it's he's worlds apart from everybody else. I mean, you see that in the world rankings. You can see that in FedEx Cup. I mean, he is. I think his lead ahead of, I don't know who's second. I think Xander now.
It's like
Is long
seventeen
is
hundred
more
points or something like
is
that.
more than like from second to last place on tour or something. It's insane. But you just like, I really enjoy playing with him. He's super cordial. Like he'll talk to you. He'll talk about anything. Obviously, they just had a baby, so, and we have a 1.5 year old. So I just kind of gave him the rundown on, like, this is what is about to happen in your life, right? And he's just a dude, right? Like he's so easy to talk to. He's awesome to play with, and there's not the that intimidation factor or the fear factor. I felt like I didn't have that.
Yeah.
Those guys talked about when Tiger was playing, he was just like, he wouldn't even talk to you, just go straight. And I could see how that's intimidating and kind of like, hey, like this is kind of scary. So in any tournament, you try to play your own game. You try to focus on what you can do. And I knew that if I could just, on that golf course, that back nine, there is just trouble everywhere, right? So I just try to give myself as many birdie looks as I possibly could, and I actually did a good job with that. I felt like, if I go through, I had a good birdie look on 10. 11's kind of like a par hole. 12, I think I made no, I made pars. I made all pars in the back nine. But like the only like trouble I got in was on 13, a little short one, and ended up making like a 20 footer for par. But the rest I actually had pretty good birdie looks, and I just didn't make any putts. I think the only bad putt I hit it was on 17, and it just kind of slid by. But yeah, I just try to kind of stay, like just keep trying to hit greens. Those greens are kind of crazy. So being able to have putts at for birdie was a big deal.
So you said something afterward. I believe your quote was you had to change a few things that weren't a great fit for the PGA Tour. And for those that aren't familiar, you had an incredible Corn Ferry Tour career. You've I think won 6 times on the Corn Ferry Tour. You've been remind me how many times you've gone to the PGA Tour and back to the Corn Ferry twice. Has that happened? You've been a little
Yeah,
up
so
and
my
down. Yeah,
first year on tour was 17, and then I lost my card that next year. I actually got it back in finals. That was back in the day when they had finals. So I actually I never really got back to the
yeah.
Corn Ferry Tour. I just played another year on tour. So 17, 18, 18, 19, and then I lost my card again on 19. Didn't get it back in finals. Ended up playing the COVID year, which just ended up almost being 2 seasons on the Corn Ferry, and then got back out here in, I guess it would have been 2021, maybe the fall 2020. And yeah, I obviously had a great career, or a great long season out on the Corn Ferry Tour, won a couple times, and won the money list. But I felt like that 2021 early in the season, I kind of ran into the same stuff that I did in the years past, right? Like, you've got to drive it better on tour than you do on the Corn Ferry. It's just a fact. And I couldn't really get away with that a little bit. On the PGA Tour. So I kind of looked at my stats and I was like, hey, you're kind of like bottom of the list driving, and I was not very long. I wasn't hitting a lot of fairways, so I was like, is it which one's easier, right? Is it easier to gain a distance, or is it easier to hit 75% of your fairways? And I felt like, hey, you know what? Let's just gain a bunch of distance and see where this takes us. Not thinking, honestly, between me and you, I didn't think it was going to turn out that way. Like, started, the whole process was obviously, it was a long deal, but it ended up making me less anxious, more free, and I was hitting it 25 yards further,
I mean,
which,
for those that don't know, you made a massive leap in distance, right? I
yeah,
mean, you were ball
it was
speed.
pretty big.
Your
Yeah.
ball speed in 2018 on the PGA Tour was 169 average. Now you're up to 178 average, which again,
Hmm.
average why like you're easily capable of 182, 183 in tournaments if you're averaging 178. For those that don't know,
Hmm.
like it's just
Yeah.
really hard to maintain a really high average, and that's a
Hmm.
high
Hmm.
average on the PGA Tour. And you're not a big guy. That was not your MO for any of your professional golf career. Like,
Hmm.
and I guess what I find unique about your story is I was caddying in the same group as you. You were playing in a Monday qualifier. I think it was fall of
Who were you
2018.
caddying for? I
Justin
can't remember.
Huber
That's
for
right. Yeah,
Sea
yeah, yeah,
Island,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
so like takeaway. I've played a ton of golf with Huber, played a ton of golf with a lot of the guys in Jackson. Like I would just say, like you just end up in this bucket of players where when you get in it, you can look around and be like, "Holy crap! There are so many players around my level right now. How do you bust out of this? How to?" And there's on the other side of the coin, there's I don't know how many tales there are out there about the perils of chasing distance, right? Like it can wreck everything, it can ruin
Yeah.
things. That there's a
Yeah.
lot of horror stories out there, right? So I mean, in all of the years of your career, did you have that experience of looking around and saying, like, all right, how am I going to separate from this pack? What's it going to be? This is worth the risk of if I do go backwards, it's worth the risk to get longer out on in
I've
pro
I've
golf.
had this conversation with a couple of my buddies, recently, actually, because I remember Joel Damon. He's obviously a good friend of mine. I remember a couple years ago, I think he was kind of chasing a little bit of distance too. He was gaining a couple miles an hour, but he was one of the straightest drivers of the game, right? Like, the guy was hitting over 70% every year. So I wouldn't say that's maybe the best way. Like, I don't know if I would have made that decision at that point. But I was hitting
You were
50
inaccurate and short. Yeah.
50% of my
Yeah.
fairways at 285. Like, you can't compete. So I was like, what? I was like, I can't hit it any more crooked. Like, why don't we just go far? Like, let's hit it far. And the fact, like, I might not, our average, like, it's still gonna hover around 60. If I'm around 60% of hit fairways, that's great for me. But like, also mentally for me, that was a huge difference in how I felt about my driving. Like, I would go up, I could get up to a hole that's, let's call it Honor Palmer number two, or number three. I mean, like, I know, like, hey, I'm not going to be anxious about this hazard on the left. Like, I'm just going to try to hit as hard as I can and find it. And the more I did that in practice, and the more my setup at home was amazing for that. I never even thought about it, but the more I did that, I'd hit one, like two or three good ones in a tournament. I was like, oh, here, wait a minute, like I can do this. So the confidence grew, and my belief in like what I'm doing grew. The speeds are going higher. Like if I did feel a little anxious, like I knew how to deal with that. Like I had a plan for that.
Mm.
So it's just, and then once I got better at that, I was like, wait a minute, like my ceiling has just gotten exponentially higher, right? Like you said, like the cesspool of people that were on my level at my previous speed was huge. I mean, there's everybody, right? Like unless you're the best putter in the world or whatever, kind of just to find an extra gear in that end gave me huge confidence in being able to compete. That year, I finished. It was my highest finish in the FedEx Cup. I finished 86, I think, or 81st or 91st or something like that. It was like low 90s, I think.
94th, 21, 22. Yep.
There you go,
Yep.
94. So I was like, hey, you know what? Kept my card. Let's take deposits out of it, but I kept continuing to do it and continue to like improve that part of my game. And now 2 years later, I feel like I can rely on that a little bit more, right? Like now I'm excited to play golf courses that are hard like Memorial next week. Super excited to play that place because
Mm.
you've got to drive in the fairway. You got to be long. So those are the two things that I'm kind of worked myself towards. Got a little bit of a spark back in my game. Like if you continuously like back and forth and like what am I doing? Like I think I'm good enough, but why is it not working? Is a miserable place to be in, right? Like that's as a golfer, if you don't have the answers and you have no way to figuring out what's happening, it's bad. So for that to have worked out the way it did, I never would have dreamed it. And I'm really happy it did because I have the opportunities to kind of, I wouldn't say later parts of my career, but like the middle part, the part that's most important. Like I can really take advantage of that, work on every part of my game, knowing that I don't have to worry about a tee shot. You
Mm.
know what I'm saying? So it's a cool spot to be in. I'm really happy with it. It took a lot of hard work. I think people sometimes forget that,
Yeah,
right?
we
Like,
skipped right. We were just like, oh yeah, now you hit it really far.
yeah, it's
We'll
so
get into how
easy.
you got there.
Why didn't you do that before,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's one of the things I think is impressive. And you see it a lot of times on tour now. Like, I mean, Xander gained 5 or 6 miles
Oh,
an
he's
hour,
been
right?
so fast this year. Yeah.
He was always in the low 80s, but I mean, he's like 87, 88. Like
Rory's still
that's
going
another
up.
10,
Rory is
15, right?
trending
Rory's
upwards.
going
Yeah.
up, like all these guys. Now Rory always
But
he
he's
always had a
always
second
fast, but
gear.
now he's getting faster and nobody like
Yeah,
people don't even notice
yeah,
it or realize it.
yeah.
It's just numbers get up so
So
quick, but
it's just a numbers game, right? Like once they came out with that strokes gained, and they told everybody at 320 in the rough or 290 in the fairway, you're better off in the rough
yeah.
at 320. Like, I mean, some golf courses maybe not, but 90% of them you're better off because you're hitting four less clubs.
Yeah.
Your ceiling goes up a little bit on that end, and it kind of it helps you, gives you shorter clubs in, makes it life a little easier, and it's a lot more fun that way as well.
No Laying Up is sponsored by FanDuel. Line up your first win when you bet the PGA Tour on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with a winning $5 bet. TC is calling his shot yet again, Tommy Fleetwood, to win in Canada this coming week. I'm sure there will be some opinions on that one. You can check out live PGA Tour bets like longest drive, round leaders, matchups, birdie or better, and more. Plus, you can track every shot live in the app and watch select par 3 holes while you place your bets. Just visit fanduel.com/NLU and take a swing at an extra $150. FanDuel, official betting operator of the PGA Tour. Must be 21 and older, 18 and older in DC and present in select states. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. First online real money wager, only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Not available in NC. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. back to the pod. The distance is one thing, but you've talked a little bit about anxiousness or things going on in your driving.
Mhm.
Can you take? I mean, from what I understand, you were going through some pretty dark times with the driver, not just not hitting
Mhm.
it, far. I believe may have gotten a tip that at one point you were hitting drivers off the deck, off the tee, give you the
Oh
best
yeah.
chance to put the ball in play. I mean, was it Y word stuff? Are we allowed to say the Y word on that? And kind of
I never felt the Y word. I'll say it. I don't have. I've never, and I might have mentioned it. I never felt the yip, honestly. But I think every problem that I think stems from that, and there's a technical problem in there, right? Now that technical problem leads to the holy shit. Like, where is this? Like,
yeah, the
what is
mental
this
problem.
doing?
Yeah,
So there's a technical problem, and then your body's like, oh, I can't play from there, and then the more you do it, and you're like, oh god, like what? So I actually played an entire. I want to say I played an entire year. I might have been close to an entire year without teeing a driver up, ever,
really.
ever, and I'd tee a three of up. It was just the funniest thing. So I can't remember when this was. This is in the early career. It was like 2016, 15, 16. I was playing a little bit of Latin tour. I was playing some web.com tour, which is the Corn Ferry tour now, and I'd always been a good driver off the deck guy. Like I'd always loved to hit it in par fives and stuff. And the guy I was working with at the time, he was like, "Why don't you just do a little like Scottish tee, right? Like knock a little." I was like, I'll try it. I mean, I was so good at it. I was so good at it. So I remember playing PGA National, where we played the used to be the Honda, the Cognizant Classic now, and I played Q School there in 2000. I want to say 16. Might have been 16 actually. Yeah, or 15. And I never teed a ball up.
Hmm.
I mean, I would hit every tee ball. I would, because it's perfect. It was Bermuda, right? Like I could get a little. It was like this high, and I
Sure.
could hit the ground, and I drove it so good. It was like I'd hit it 260 in there, and I was like, it was amazing. And on 18, good. On that golf course, you've got like you're claustrophobic the entire time. But on 18, I looked at my guy, my coach was caddying it to me at the time. And I was like, should we tee this one up? And he's like,
No.
definitely not. This is going to stay on the ground. Anyway, so that kind of gave me like, it was to the point where it wouldn't be every drive, but it was like once or twice around where
Which
I was like,
if you blow once or twice around the
I
PGA
mean,
Tour
as a
off the map,
professional golfer,
that's
buddy,
2
you're
shots.
gone.
Yeah,
I mean, that's four shots, really,
yeah.
if you think about it. So it was a really bad feeling, right? Like we practiced so hard, and at home it was fine, on the range it's fine, and you get on a like it wasn't even the tight holes. Honestly, the tight holes were easier. It was the ones that you're like, oh, you can't miss this one, and it was kind of stuck underneath, and it was, I mean,
Off the plane.
right, and it was a bad feeling, man. That's where I kind of was like, I don't know if I've got this. Like, I don't know if I can play with this.
Mm.
And then it got better in like 17 a little bit, but I still have it every once in a while. And it was something honestly, it was something I struggled with for 5 years at least.
Wow.
And it just never, like, I would be okay for 3, 4, 5 tournaments. And then, yeah, I'd hit one. I'm like, right? Like it's the worst feeling in the world. I mean, literally worst feeling in the world. There's some dark times in golf wise, right? Like it was hard. But if I compare where I came from on that and how I feel over it now, I it's I would have to smile every time
Well,
because it's. I mean, it couldn't be more night and day. It could not be more night and day.
and you go watch
And
that,
any
like, the 18th hole or 72nd hole at Houston, it's like I mean, I honestly didn't know all of this about your path, and I watched that drive, and I was like, "Man, he sent that thing." Like, that was full trust, like, low arm tension, just full, like, no
Mm,
inhibitions at all. There was no
mm.
guide in
Mm.
that swing. It was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit this. You make that replay. Go for people go watch that clip now and be like, holy, hear that backstory and hear that. And won you PGA
Yeah,
Tour
and
event.
you asked the right guys, man. They've seen some stuff, right? Like I don't know who you got this information from, but it must have been some of my buddies that we used to play with, right? And it wasn't pretty, right? I mean, and I was putting lights out and chipping. I've always been a pretty good chipper, and I was missing 15 cuts on the Corn Ferry Tour because you just can't. Like I said, you cannot play like that as a professional golfer.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you almost have to quit, right? And to kind of persevere through that, I mean, I tried everything. I tried psychologist. I tried name it, tapping. Some baseball guy was like, "How much you charge tapping?" I was like, "The hell
What
is
is
this?
that?
Like, what is that?" I mean, everything.
What is it?
You
What is
can.
tapping?
It's like you tap something. I never. I tried it one day. I was like, "No, this ain't it. This ain't it, buddy." I mean, everything. Like you cannot imagine the 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 things I've tried to fix that. And sure enough, trying to gain 10 miles an hour in ball speed sure did the trick.
I've read or heard that the one thing that has stuck with you though is meditation. Is that right? I
Mhm.
mean, what is?
Well,
I hear some people that rave about meditation and the benefits of it. I'm wondering if that is, yeah.
so that was actually it's fairly recent, last probably 2 or 3 years
Okay.
thing. So maybe that was maybe kind of subconsciously that it helped me. It's something it started out of like my wife and I used to do. We either would take something away or add something for 1 month. So like let's not eat dessert for a month or fried food for a month or alcohol for a month, or let's do I don't know what we added. Added like you got to do 100 push-ups every whatever it was. I can't remember. But 1 month I was like, hey, I'm gonna meditate every day. I was like, I don't know how to do it. I have no clue. This is years ago, but I'm gonna try it. And through that, I really resonated with it. I loved it.
Mm.
Like it gave me kind of a quiet space in that psycho brain of mine that I had, right? Like if you think about it, what when you drive it like that, what's going on in your mind? I mean, it's a million miles an hour, right? So it gave me a little bit of break from that. So starting with that, it kind of got me into that space of I won't call it self healing or whatever. It just kind of gave me a little bit more perspective. I'm like, hey, this the I guess your awareness of what you're thinking about in your mind and all of that kind of stuff. And it was really interesting to me. So like I kind of stuck with that. And when I started reading books about it, like all the kind of not the golf self help, like more of like the general idea of it. And I mean, I still do it. It is rare that I don't get at least one in a day.
Mm.
Sometimes it's two, one in the morning, one at night. I mean, it's not an hour. It's not. I'm not a monk, but I do like 15 minutes in the morning and maybe 10 minutes a night, right? So, it really, I love it.
Yeah.
I've tried all of them, like different kinds, and it just resonated with me, and it helped me kind of this path of. I don't want to call it enlightenment because that's way above my pay grade, but like kind of just like, hey, there's a little bit more to life than trying to make as much money and play professional golf and win golf tournaments, right? That comes with it, and it was been a really cool path, and it's really helped me in that sense, and that could have been one of the reasons why I slowly got better with my driving because I maybe not put as much pressure on like, hey, this is the most important driver of your life, rather than like, hey, let's just do our best and see what happens.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. I think about I should definitely try meditation because I think about like the clearest time I ever have thinking maybe once every 3 months we'll go get a massage and
Hmm.
like that I don't have my phone, my eyes are closed and like
Hmm.
I'm like I walk
Hmm.
out of that and I'm like I've just thought so clearly and I just sit around looking at my phone and looking at computer screens the rest of the day. Like it can't be. I
It
wonder which one's better for your brain.
Well, the funny thing is when you started actually in the beginning, it there's a little bit of a learning curve because once you're quiet, you realize how much your mind actually talks. It's insane. I mean, I'm aware of it now, but I never used to be aware, and I'm like, dude, shut up. What? it's insane. Like it still does it to me, but I obviously like have the, I guess, the tools and stuff to be like, hey, wait a minute, this is actually not what this is not me, right?
Mm.
This is just my mind talking. But to be like absolute in that zone in a sense is it's I love it. I really do. It could help a lot of people with, like if you talk about anxieties and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a healer of everything for
Mm.
sure.
So again, we're about a half hour into this, and we haven't gotten to how you gained the distance that you gained, right?
Mhm,
And it's I understand you've worked with Mike Carroll, who runs Fit
mhm,
for Golf. Kind of just
mhm.
take us into your process of getting started and kind of what the kind of the physical journey and how it works with speeds. How'd you do it?
It's honestly, you will not. I don't know if you know the answer, or you probably do your research. You probably know what I did. It's really simple. I just hit 30 balls every 2 or 3 days with my driver that I play every round with as hard as I physically could.
That's it.
That's it.
I did not know
Now,
that actually.
Now you've got to know where your baseline is, right? Like you have to write this stuff down. You have to have a track, not a TrackMan per se, but there's these little radars that you can get that are fairly inexpensive, and you have to be able to track it, right? Like I knew that I started at the first session I ever did. I can't remember when this was. This me and Mike talked about this last or 2 weeks ago. But I mean, I lashed at these guys. I mean, absolute full on as hard as I could, and I think my average was 168.9. I mean, I lashed at it, right? Like I went full board, like 100% at it, and I couldn't. I couldn't get to 170.
Hmm.
So after like a month or two, I was like, hey, I got good at 73, 74. Then I could get to 76, 77. And the cool setup for me was I went to the practice facility I practice is a UTC facility here in Chattanooga where I went to college. And they have a really good setup. They have great range and they've got a couple holes. One of the holes is it's like a 310-yard par four, all like trees lined down the left, and you can kind of cut it off. And that's what I was saying about, visually it helped me. So I would do that on that hole because I felt like if I did it on a hole, it would give me a good visual. I'm like actually driving on a golf hole rather than the range. You have a
Totally.
70-yard out wide range. It still does the same, but it just visually for me. And I did my first session. I hit 32 balls. I had 27 on the fairway. I had two left in the woods, and like three I hit like in right of the bunker or something. I was like, wait a minute, I just hit 20. I mean, I'm going. Both of my feet are in the air. I'm going full send, right? Like I'm going at it, and that's when I started like, hey, what? Am I gonna get straighter through this? And like trial and error a little bit here and there on like what worked best and like how my body would react and all that kind of stuff. But like it was kind of like amazing the first time I did it. And the more I did it, I realized, hey, if I just, if I'm tired, I'm going to be 2 miles an hour slower. If it's cold, I'm going to be 3 miles an hour slower. If I just worked out and it's hot, I'm going to be 2 miles an hour faster. Like there's so many variables. And that's why you said earlier about the average speed. My average speed is 78 right now. If it's 80, I can't remember in Dallas, my average for the week was 81, I think, or
Sheesh.
80. But then you play like Pebble and it's 75 because it's cold and it's windy and you have 7 layers on and it's in the morning, whatever it is. That's pretty much it. I did that for probably 2 years. I don't really do the sessions anymore. I had this conversation with Mike the other day. He's like, hey, you still keeping up? I was like, well, every time I hit a driver, I go 100% at it. So there's my speed session. If I had 15 drivers on the range and 15 drivers on the golf course, there's my 30 balls.
Well, it sounds like you're combining the couple things we've talked about here is like you're getting out of the way of some of the mental stuff of trying to
Mm-hmm.
guide it. I mean, everybody that goes through
Mm-hmm.
driver stuff is probably trying to guide it at some point, whereas like
Mm-hmm.
your technique is better when you go faster and harder than,
Mm-hmm.
just getting your
Freer
brain
for
out. Yeah.
sure.
Getting your brain out of the way and going. Is
Mm-hmm.
there,
Mm-hmm.
so nothing changed physically in terms of, workouts or mobility or
I did a
strength?
little bit of like I did a little bit of little heavier workouts, like maybe not as golf specific, a little more like actual, fitness, a little heavier squats, a little more lower body, um, but nothing. I mean, no, I was
Hmm.
185 when I started, and I'm 185 now. Like, there's no. I might have gotten a little stronger, I would say. Here's the thing: I think your ceiling goes up, right? Like, if you're super strong, you've got to teach your body to swing fast, right? Like, that's I had this conversation with a buddy of mine that's one on the try that plays on the Corn Ferry Tour, and I was like, if your ceiling is at 175, you got to get stronger because you want your ceiling, you want your body to be able to swing faster. Like, everybody is going to learn how to swing faster. However, like, if you're weak or short or whatever it is, technical flaws in your golf swing, your ceiling is going to go lower, right? And my swing was kind of short and laid off, and through the training it actually got parallel and across the line, which was a technical flaw that actually got me in the problem areas for years. Like, I would kind of, it would laid off and I'd lay it up, but and it'd be so far underneath that I either flip it way over or I'd hit it way right. And for me to be able to get close to parallel, even past parallel, was for me. I had so much time on the top, right? Like, I was so used to be like, that I was like, just had so much time, right? And that was a technical thing that helped me with, with my golf swing in a sense on that end. And it was like, it. I'm not saying that's going to happen to everybody,
I was
but
gonna say this doesn't quite sound like advice for everyone. I'm just going
no, I'm not saying
impulsively
that at
as
all.
hard as you
I'm
can.
I'm not saying that. When I say this, like, hey, you may hit less fairways. Just be ready for that. If you want to be faster, you may hit less fairways. I don't know. I hit more.
Hmm.
So I don't know how to explain that.
So, all right, if you go to dial up, like I want to hit this harder, like you can easily say swing harder. I'm going to swing harder. I find that if I just try to swing harder, sometimes I will slow down. Right? If I don't know if that's tension or what's causing that. Right? If you go, how would you explain to someone how to go faster, how to hit it harder, how to swing harder? Like, where does it come from? Is it arms, hips, legs, knees, feet?
Your body just doesn't know.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't know. Your body has. You've hit so many golf balls in your life, especially pros. We've hit so many golf balls in our life that our body just, that's our speed, right? Like, so those sessions are to teach your body to swing faster. That's the only thing you're trying to do. It doesn't matter where it goes. Like, if I had a speed session, like, I've hit way foul balls in a speed session. Like, my fastest balls ever were kind of a pull straight ball because they just go for, like, they're faster. So if you're doing the sessions, you're actually not thinking about technique. I don't think about technique at all. Like, I'm just trying to get as much speed as I possibly can in this golf ball, and your body will figure it out.
Hmm.
If you're a good player, your body's going to figure it out. Now, if you're a 15 handicap, you've got some work to do. Like, hey, figure out how to be a scratch first, and then figure that part out, right? Because if you've got 120 miles an hour and you're a 15 handicap, like, I know what kind of driver you are.
Hmm.
Like, it's gonna be wild.
Hmm.
But, like, so it's all about teaching your body to swing faster, and that's why I love that the speed session, because it was your drive, it was my gamer driver.
Yeah.
I would hit it on the golf hole, and I would hit it as hard as I never did speed sticks. I never did stack. I never did any of that, and I'm sure it works. I felt like, if why would I want to get quicker with a rod and a weird weight on the end, and then I'm gonna go my driver and it feels totally different. Like, I want to get faster with my actual driver. So that just made so much sense to me, and obviously there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of research behind these things, and I'm sure they do work. I never did them.
Hmm. That's fascinating. I truly did not know the answer to that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
really
yeah. It's
interesting.
it's kind of boring, but and I tell you what, it is. You're exhausted
Yeah.
after 30 minutes.
I've done some of Mike's
Absolutely
stuff. Yeah, and it's I mean,
exhausted.
3 sets of 8 drivers hitting
Mhm.
as hard as you can, and it's like you're just dripping
You're
sweat. You
exhausted.
don't even care how hot it is. You are
Mhm.
dripping sweat. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And you sore the next day.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not through no one's fault but my own. I hurt myself doing it. I think of just like
And that's the next part where I realized that I was kind of getting a little bit back issues, so I needed to up my physio strength recovery program, because if I'm going to put that much more pressure on my body, I'm going to have to be able to calm it down too, and make sure it doesn't flare up every single week. And that was something I learned as well. And I knew that was going to happen. I mean, just a matter of, like, if you're going to go harder at it, it's your body is going to hurt more.
Totally.
Simple as that.
I mean, it's for those that aren't following it closely, it's paid off in a great way. You're 17th in the FedEx
Hmm.
Cup now. I mean, you had even since the win, you had a T18 at Heritage, T20 at the CJ Cup, T21 at Wells Fargo, and you've T3 at Mexico this year as well, T3 at
Hmm.
Farmers. I
Hmm.
picked you to ball out of Pebble. You, of course, finished 71st in that one. That's great.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
a tough one there.
what 17th in the FedEx Cup now? Like, I mean, I would have to imagine goals have pretty seriously changed for this year. Is there something you can point at the end of this year to say, like, if this happens for the remainder of the year, I can look back at this year as a great success?
I actually don't really do goals,
No,
to be honest with you. They Not those kind of goals. They actually get me more frustrated than anything
I could
if
see
I don't
that.
hit them,
Yeah,
right? So I'm more of the guy that I try to have a growing mentality of all times, right? Like, I want to get better, and that's something I've done over the last couple of years. I want to get better every year. Now, of course, I have goals. Like, of course, I want to make the Tour Championship, and I want to be on the Ryder Cup team. All that, all this cool stuff, right? That you want to look back at when your career's over and be like, God, that was cool, right? But I still have so many things that in my mind I can get better, way better at, that I can be up there with the best in the world. And that's my goal, right? Like, ultimate goal is to give everything I got, and the time I have left on being able to play professional golf and being able to compete. And if I get everything out of it and I didn't get some of my goals or whatever, too bad. But at least I gave it my best, right? And that's kind of the main thing. I want to get better. I want to get better at, driving. Obviously, you can always get better. I want to get a better iron player. I want to be a better wedge player. Like, my putting needs to be more consistent. So there's so many things that I still want to do. Mentally, I still have to get a little bit better here and there. So it's a work in progress, and it never. I mean, this game never stops, man. You stop working on that when you're done playing golf. That's pretty much when you're done. So.
if I forget to have included this in the intro for those listening, Stephen plays under you're German, so this would be the
Mhm.
European Ryder Cup team that
Yeah.
you'd be playing. Sometimes
Yes.
I forget this as well because I was like, Ryder Cup,
Yeah.
President's Cup is this year. What are you talking about? No, he's right.
Hmm.
He's German. He's
Hmm.
German. The accent,
Yes. Yes.
the accent's not quite.
It's not there anymore. Well, it's a little bit, but not very prominent anymore.
It's
Yeah.
southern
Southern
U.S.
Tennessee
Tennessee
and yeah,
German.
that's right.
It's the best.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you get to live the dream. Like, you have your young son and wife run out on the 18th green, PGA Tour event, and come hug and kiss and all that. You look so stoic through all of that. I mean, you just like the emotion isn't really, apparent. Are you in shock in that moment, or is it, kind of all the journey you've been on? You would think it's kind of overflowing at that point.
Yeah, I try to be good. I try to be a good loser, also a good winner. And I don't really, celebrating somebody missing doesn't seem like. Now, if I would have made that putt and Scotty would have had no chance, I probably would have gone nuts. But, like, I just didn't. I had to actually have this conversation with my wife the other day. I was like, I just didn't feel like fist pumping in the guy's face,
Yeah.
right? Like, that didn't seem right to me. And you know what? I got humbled pretty quickly. We after all the media stuff, and I had Miller Lighted the media stuff, and I got home and I went in the bathroom with my kid and put him down to bed, and we had to go food for celebration. Like, as a family, you just kind of, man, you're back to work, right? Like, you don't have any. We didn't go out celebrating with all my buddies and dinner. Like, I have a son at home that needs to go to sleep at 7:30, right? Like, you're back to reality. We did have a nice couple nights at home when I got home and had everybody over, and it was awesome. But yeah, I just didn't feel like, I'm not the look at me guy in a sense. I try to kind of fly under the radar a little bit. and I didn't feel like it was the right thing to do to just let loose. And honestly, I thought I was gonna make it.
Yeah.
I was honestly when I was standing there. I remember when I stood over there. It was face on, and I was like, okay, so 18. I'm just like I was already in 18
Yeah.
again, because you kind of get taught that, right?
Totally.
In match play, you're like, hey, you expect that guy to make it, especially that guy,
Yeah.
right? Like giving him that opportunity, it was a no brainer for me, and so when he missed it, I was like, wait a minute, what? Just wait, what? And then like everybody's cheering, and I was like, holy shit, I just won! Like I was, it's my dream for so many years that it was like you said, it was kind of a little bit more of a shock. And then my wife came out, and she was kind of crying, and my son was like, he. I don't know. He always laughs when she cries. I'm not sure what's going on there, but he was laughing, and he's looking at all the, pointing at all the cameras and stuff. It was such a cool moment, and I'm glad they got to be there. And one of the goals of my life is to win one when he remembers it, right? Like he won't remember that. So hopefully when he's 6, 7, 8, I may have another shot at it, and he actually remembers dad being a cool, hey, that guy's kind of cool. We all as dads want to do that all the time.
So you pack up, you go home for a week. You didn't play the next week, did you? You go to
No,
yeah.
I was going to play, but
Then you're
yeah, I
off
went
to the
home.
Masters. You're off to Augusta. Had you been to Augusta prior to playing in the Masters? Is this
No,
first time?
actually, I went down there. I'd always, I mean, I know a couple members and stuff, and I always said the first time I've been down there. I mean, I went to a couple of practice rounds years ago, but I never played it. I was like, the first time I want to play it is when I actually get to
Wow.
play it. We played the Thursday before. It was me, my caddy drove up, and it was just us two and the caddy, local caddy, great guy. It was blowing like 30. I was like, hey, yo, what is, like, wait a minute, this place is impossible. And it sure enough ended up being impossible for me that week, man. That was, once again, a humbler. Golf is a great humbler in life, right? Like, I actually didn't even feel like I played that poorly. And I can't remember what I shot the first round. I think 2 over and 80
Yep.
second round.
That wind
I'm
was
like,
absurd. I mean, that was I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't been there in person on that Friday for just how windy
it
that
just
was.
was,
Oh,
that place, you have like 2 or 3 yards in certain spots, right, to land it on. And you're playing, like, I remember a couple holes, like, I played it in on the right, and then all of a sudden it would be down off the left. I'm like, how? I don't know what to do here. I don't know how to play this golf course like this. But hey, the best player in the world won. He figured it out. So I don't really. I'll have my revenge on that one. I'll go back, and I'll be, not revenge, but like I wanna have another try at it.
it's
It
it's
kind
the
of,
kind of course that like it as soon as you walk off it, you're like, if I can go right back and do it, I'll do it differently. I know what to do now.
yeah, I know what to do,
Yeah,
yeah, and they don't. But
yeah.
it just, with the wind swirling like that, it just was, man, it was insane. Like I'd never, like, you couldn't, as professional golfers, like if we have 175 and we know we just hit it
Yeah.
175, and you're like posing on it, and you're like, oh my god, get down or go. It was a wild week. Obviously, the first time, we had family there with a big house, and it you almost have to, right? Like it's, like, oh, I want to compete, but it's everybody's dream. Everybody that's kind of been in my corner forever, like you want to share that with everybody, and that's kind of the fun part too. So, but I want to have another crack at it for sure.
Yeah. Make that tour championship, then you'll be right
Hmm.
back.
Mm.
What did you think about Valhalla as a major championship venue?
It's been my favorite one I've ever played, and I played 3 U.S. Opens, and two were probably the worst U.S. Opens of all time. And I can let you guess which two they were.
You play
Well, it was in the last six
you
years,
played
8 years.
3 US Open. You played 15 and 17, which
Yeah,
I would call like that's what's
the
funny.
worst.
I think Valhalla is a terrible major venue, and I think
What? I love it.
Aaron Hills and
I think it's
Chambers
great.
Bay, I think are fantastic golf
Oh,
courses.
that's terrible. Jesus Christ. If somebody paid me $1 million to play Chambers Bay, I wouldn't play it again.
Would you with like the greens are way better now? Would you play it again? Was that the biggest culprit of it?
just don't know. I just sometimes Aaron Hills was better. I feel like Aaron Hills was better. Sometimes I just don't love goofy stuff. Like
Pros
it's
don't. Yeah.
hey, trust me, I get it. Like you drive down into that in that property and the I don't know what is it no, not Hope Sound. What's the sound behind it? And it's like it's picturesque. Like it's awesome. It looks cool. It plays terrible. I didn't enjoy it. I really didn't. Anyways, I really like Valhalla as a golf course. I think it's like now it played as easy as it could get, right? Like the fairways weren't super soft. They were running a little bit, and the greens were mush. Like you can't give professional golfers an easier setup. The rough wasn't that thick. It was thick enough, but it wasn't that thick. So I think if they grew the rough up a little more and the greens get firm, I think you shoot 12 under winning.
Yeah. It seemed like
I just
a medium level PGA Tour course to me, right? It just the way it played, and that could be rain or whatever it was, but
yeah.
I
I
like
mean
the
it's
majors because there's something different, right? They just
yeah. You like carnage. This is what you like.
not even carnage. It just requires a different level of
Well,
precision. Like I don't want to see just silly golf, right? I don't want to. It just felt like comparing it to Oak Hill the prior year. It just felt like there was a better balance of risk reward of trying to balance making birdie versus making
Oak Hill was
bogey.
great.
Yeah,
Honestly, Oak Hill was. It did have some funky stuff too. Some of the holes, like when it gets, I can't remember number 7. Remember number 7? You had to hit like a 4 iron. If you landed anywhere right, it would go in the water.
yeah.
Not a great hole. But Oak Hill, I thought was. I think the PGA does honestly the best job setting it up every year. Like US Opens, they just they just honestly try to aggravate you nonstop.
Well, they've
And they
stopped trying to do that since Shinnecock at 18. They've been pretty soft on the setup since then.
yeah, that's true.
You played
Well,
Winged
we'll see
Foot.
what
Yeah.
Pinehurst is going to look like here. I don't know what the weather looks like in North Carolina, but if that place gets firm and fast, geez, that'll be fun to watch. But in then honestly, that's something I definitely need to learn as well, right? Like you gotta if you want to compete in majors, there is going to be some goofy stuff, and you're going to have to get like you said, more precise and put it on a list, man. That's something I definitely need to get better at. I want to get better at because I want to have a change. I want to be able to win.
There's no reason you
One
can't now, right? I mean, that's the thing
right,
is
like
there's no you've passed the prerequisite, right? You hit it above average distance. Like that opens up just
mm,
so many doors
yeah,
for you. It really
yeah. I
does.
agree. I agree.
It really
I
does.
agree.
Last question. I hope
Mhm.
this is I how is no baked cookie dough still going?
It is not going
Is
anymore. Nope.
not. Darn it. Okay.
It is. It is still going. Period.
Okay.
So you can still buy some online, but it won't do us any good.
Okay.
No, we closed the shop this year actually because it was a kind of a combo between my wife and her sister, and they had a second baby, and we had a baby. It just nobody had time for it,
I
honestly.
figured as much. Honestly, as soon as I saw that you had a
It just
one and a
kind of
half
got to
year
the
old.
point where
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it just we didn't have time for it. And but it was a cool
What
cool deal, right?
for the
Like the
people that
product was
yeah, what
unbelievable.
was it for
Like
those
it
that don't
really
know?
was. It's an edible cookie dough that was that was really easy to kind of travel with because it was it used like heat treated flour, so it wouldn't like there wasn't any issue. I mean, I can't say it like there shouldn't been any issues on like being able to not having it in the refrigerator all the time, and there was no egg in it. But I thought it was the best product I've ever had on, and I love raw cookie dough, right? And it was cool. It
Yeah.
was fun, but no, we do not have time for that anymore.
I would be very confused as to how you would have time
Yeah, I'm
for it
like, hey,
now.
dude, go practice, right? Yeah,
Braxton, take
uh,
care of your kids. So,
that's right. That's right.
all right, well, we're
Full
gonna
time
let you
job.
out, man. We'll be seeing you a lot more in the remainder of this season. I'm really happy for you, excited for your success.
I
If
appreciate it.
I'll dig up the episode number. Steven's been on the podcast. Gosh, that was what 2018.
It's,
We were in Germany. I think we did that pod
oh, in Cologne.
in Cologne. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Way
it
back in
was.
the
That's
day. It's probably
right.
about 6 years
God, dude, I
ago.
played terrible there too.
We weren't hitting it anywhere back then.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and that golf course was kind of tough, to
Yeah.
be honest with you.
So, but super pumped
Um,
for your success, man. We really appreciate your time and yeah, keep it going. I think you're just getting started. I really do believe that. So, best of
I
luck and
appreciate it,
appreciate
buddy.
your time. Cheers.
Thanks.
For FanDuel, you must be 21 and older or 18 and older in D.C. and President select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Vermont, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.